Welcome to the video on Environmental Impact Assessment or EIA. Throughout this video, we will cover what EIA is, next its objective and importance, then we will discuss the stages within EIA process, after which we will examine the stakeholders involved in EIA process, and finally we will address both benefits and challenges it presents. Let's dive in. First, what is Environmental Impact Assessment? We have definitions from various reputable sources such as United Nations Environment Programme UNEP, International Association for Impact Assessment IAIA, and the Food and Agriculture Organization FAO. Now let's dive into these definitions. According to United Nations Environment Programme UNEP, Environmental Impact Assessment is a tool used to identify the environmental, social, and economic impacts of a project prior to decision making. Next, the International Association for Impact Assessment IAIA defines EIA as the process of identifying, predicting, evaluating, and mitigating the biophysical, social, and other relevant effects of development proposals prior to major decisions being taken and commitments made. As per the Food and Agriculture Organization FAO, environmental impact assessment is a formal process to predict the environmental consequences of human development activities and to plan appropriate measures to eliminate or reduce adverse effects and to augment positive effects. Therefore, EIA is a process used to evaluate the potential environmental consequences of a proposed project, plan, or policy before it is being implemented. Its main goal is to find, predict, and understand the possible environmental effects and suggest ways to reduce or lessen them. So, EIA examines how projects impact the environment, considering both positive and negative effects. EIA helps policymakers to approve environmentally sustainable projects, reject projects that harm the environment, and modify projects to reduce environmental impacts. Now let's discuss EIA's evolution and history. The story of EIA goes back to 1970s. In 1969, the USA introduced its first National Environment Policy Act, NEPA 1969. In 1970s, EIA is born and initially practiced by developed nations. In 1974, Colombia became one of the earliest developing nations to implement EIA. In 1978, the Philippines also adopted EIA into its policies. In 1989, World Bank adopts EIA as a major development project. In mid-1990s, over 100 countries adopt EIA as a major environmental policy. Present day, EIA is practiced in more than 100 countries worldwide. EIA started in India in the late 1970s to assess river valley projects. In 1986, EIA became a legal requirement with the Environment Protection Act. Other laws related to EIA include the Wildlife Act 1972, Water Act 1974, Air Act 1981, and Biological Diversity Act 2002. NBIS was set up in 1982 to collect and share environment-related information. Before 1994, no formal EIA process existed. In 1994, the first EIA notification was introduced, marking the beginning of a formal EIA process. In 2006, EIA underwent a big update. The update likely included new criteria such as biodiversity conservation, climate change impacts, and community involvement. Now EIA is a crucial step in project planning, assessing environmental impacts, and finding solutions to mitigate them. The 2006 amendment to EIA notification introduced the following changes, which are categorization of projects and appraisal process. EIA notification of 2006 divided the development projects into two groups, namely Category A National Level Appraisal and Category B State Level Appraisal. At the national level, Category A projects are evaluated by Impact Assessment Agency IAA and the Expert Appraisal Committee EAC, whereas Category B projects are informed at state level. The State Level Expert Appraisal Committee SEAC and the State Level Environment Impact Assessment Authority SCIAA were established to approve Category B processes. The amendment decentralized the environmental clearance process for Category B projects, allowing for more localized decision making. That is, this amendment gives power or control to smaller local groups or individuals rather than having a centralized authority to make all decisions. Examples of Category A includes large dams, thermal power plants, nuclear power plants, major highway projects, offshore oil drilling, steel plants, large-scale chemical plants, high-speed rail projects, and many more. And examples of Category B projects includes small-scale renewable energy projects like wind, solar, hydro, small-scale farming projects, small-scale manufacturing units, tourism, small-scale road improvement projects, and many more. The Indian government has proposed a new EIA rule called EIA Notification 2020. This rule replaces the 2006 notification. New terms and agencies are introduced like eco-sensitive area and accredited environment impact assessment consultant organization. There might be a team of experts to decide which projects are okay and which ones could cause problems for health and nature. Decisions on environmental clearance will be made faster within 90 days instead of 105 days. If someone disagrees with a decision about a project, they can complain to a special court called the National Green Tribunal within a month. Now let's understand the objectives and importance of EIA. Here are the main objectives of environmental impact assessment. The main goal of EIA is to identify potential environmental problems, minimize harm to the environment, maximize the benefits of a project or activity while minimizing its environmental cost. It involves stakeholders, including local communities and individuals, in the decision-making process. It identifies the consequences of a proposed project on the environment, including both positive and negative impacts. Now let's understand the importance of EIA. First, it protects environment and health. That is, EIA makes sure projects don't harm nature and people's health. Next, it promotes sustainable development. That is, it helps to make sure development doesn't hurt the environment. Next, it ensures transparency and accountability in decision making. That is, EIA makes sure everyone knows what's going on with projects and holds decision makers responsible for their choices. Next up, it identifies environmental improvement opportunities. That is, EIA finds a way to make projects better for the environment using cleaner tech or preserving nature. And next, it reduces project risk and liabilities. That is, EIA stop future problems and save money by fixing issues earlier. Now let's understand the EIA process. The stages within EIA process typically include screening, scoping, impact assessment, mitigation and management, reporting, review, decision making, implementation and follow-up. Screening is the first step in environmental impact assessment process. It helps to determine if a project needs a full EIA, limited EIA or no EIA at all. It assesses the key factors such as size, location and potential environmental impacts of a project. Scoping is a critical step in preparation of an EIA. It identifies the issues that are most important during the EIA and eliminate the insignificant issues. Scoping in EIA defines the project boundaries like construction, operation and decommissioning. It identifies the key environmental issues like air quality, water resources, biodiversity, land use, and socio-economic aspects. Also, it involves in considering alternative project design, location, or operational methods that could potentially reduce adverse environmental impacts. Public consultation is an integral part of scoping. It involves actively engaging with various stakeholders, including affected communities, government agencies, non-governmental organizations, and experts. The purpose of public consultation is to gather input and concerns from the stakeholders, collect local knowledge and traditional practices, identify potential environmental and social impacts, inform the development of EIA report, and build trust and transparency throughout the assessment process. Impact assessment and mitigation. This step is the core part of an EIA. Impact assessment is a detailed evaluation of the potential environmental and social effects of a project. It includes qualitative descriptions such as measuring high, medium, and low impacts, and quantitative descriptions such as indicating the cubic meters of water withdrawn, sewage produced, and pollutants released. Mitigation refers to minimizing or avoiding the described impacts. The key focus of mitigation action should be on preventive measures that avoid the occurrence of impacts and thus avoid harm and even produce positive outcomes, and the measures that focus on limiting the severity and duration of the impact, and compensation mechanisms for those impacts that are unavoidable and cannot be reduced further. Impact management prepares the plans required for addressing mitigation measures and other project risks such as technological failures and natural disasters. The EIA report includes project components like project description, environmental and social impacts, mitigation measures, management and monitoring plans, public and stakeholder engagement. Review and licensing check on the quality of EIA report submitted to obtain a project license. Based on the findings of the review, regulatory authorities decide whether to approve, reject, or modify the proposed project. So the decision-making process ensures that the project is thoroughly evaluated for its potential environmental impacts and that adequate measures are in place to mitigate and manage those impacts. The implementation and follow-up process ensures that the project is implemented in a responsible manner with regular monitoring and adjustments to minimize environmental impacts. The follow-up assessment and closure certificate provide closure to EIA process and ensures that the project has met all the necessary environmental requirements. Now let's understand who handles the preparation of an EIA. The preparation of EIA is typically handled by a multidisciplinary team of experts like environmental consultants, project developers, government agencies, independent experts, and stakeholders like local communities, NGOs, etc. Now let's discuss the benefits and challenges of EIA. First, benefits of EIA: informed decision making, meaning that making choices based on good information. Environmental protection, taking care of nature and reducing harm. It is cost saving, that is efficient use of resources and minimizing waste. And then improved project design, that is making plans that work better and more efficient. And next, public participation, that is involving people in decisions that affect them. And then compliance with regulation, that is following rules and laws. Next, identification of opportunities, meaning that finding chances to do things better or differently. Next, improved risk management, that is handling potential problems before they become a big issue. And here are the challenges of EIA. It is time consuming and resource intensive, meaning that it takes lot of time and use lot of resources. Next, complexity. Some impacts are hard to figure out and thus make the assessment difficult. Next, data limitations. EIA relies on data that might be incomplete, old, or not reliable, and this make it tough to accurately predict how a project might affect the environment. Stakeholder engagement. Talking with stakeholders like local communities and NGOs can be hard. Sometimes their opinions and needs clash, which makes decisions more complicated. Next up, cost. Conducting an EIA can be expensive, which can be a barrier for projects with limited budgets. Next, lack of expertise. Doing an EIA requires special skills. Sometimes the people doing it do not have those skills, so they need to ask experts from outside for help. And then, political and social pressures. Decisions about EIA can be influenced by politics or what people think. This can affect how honest and believable the assessment is. Finally, implementation and enforcement issues. Even if an EIA finds problem, it can be hard to fix them, particularly if there is a lack of enough rules or people to watch over everything. And that's all for this session. Thank you so much.